Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Tropical update number 37 on the Remnants of Fred, Tropical Storm Grace, and Tropical Storm Henri. Henri currently making its way towards the northeastern United States, where it could have significant impacts. We'll talk more about that towards the end of the video. Grace currently located over the Yucatan, heading towards mainland Mexico. We'll talk about that in the middle of the video, and we're going to knock things off with the Remnants of Fred. Probably our last update on Fred. As it is finally exiting the United States. A little bit more rain expected with the storm. The next advisory from the Weather Prediction Center will be at 5 this evening. Let's move on to Grace. Grace now making its way out of the Yucatan Peninsula, where it made landfall near Tulum last night. Speaking of Tulum, from there around to Campeche, a tropical storm warning is in effect for the Yucatan Peninsula, as well as a tropical storm warning on mainland Mexico from Cabo Rojo north to Barra del Tordo. And then the hurricane warning is in effect from Cabo Rojo south to Puerto Veracruz. And so that's our current watches and warnings. No watches with Grace at the moment. So again, we'll continue to watch Grace over the next day or so. It has about a day over the Bay of Campeche, where it could and probably will strengthen at least into a Category 1 hurricane again before making landfall, dissipating, but the mid-level center might still stay intact along with the precipitation associated with it, and then potentially reform in the Eastern Pacific, where it will get a new name. The odds of that happening currently are 60%. Next partial advisory at 4 Central and full advisory at 7 Central. That's in the wrong order down at the bottom of the screen. The partial, or no, that's in the right order. The full is at 4 and the partial is at 7. Anyways, as we can see on this, it's all but certain that we have tropical storm and hurricane force winds along the eastern Mexico coast. Rainfall, big concern with this, 6 to 12, isolated 18 for central and northern Veracruz, northern Puebla, and Hidalgo. We also have 4 to 8 inches, isolated 12 for the north central Yucatan Peninsula. And also, once again, storm surge going to be concerned with Grace 3 to 5 feet near and just north of the landfall point. So that will be of concern. Let's take a look at the H-WRF model for Grace. We see Grace making its way, strengthening somewhat, making its way into, I believe, a high-end Cat 1 is where this model brings it to before making landfall. In Mexico, again, we're all done with this storm in about 60 hours from now. It hits those mountains in Mexico and the low-level center dissipates. Taking a look at the GFS model, we see a bit stronger of the storm moves up to the north. The GFS ensembles are what we're showing today. Instead of the spaghetti models, I think on both Grace and Henri, the GFS and European models ensembles are more representative of the storm than the spaghetti models today. And so if we look at the GFS and the European, we see a bit stronger of a storm, tends to bring it a bit further north up the coast, but nonetheless somewhere south at Cabo Rojo is where we're looking at landfall for Grace at this point. The Cat 2 isn't out of the question, but Cat 1 certainly the most likely strength for Grace at landfall. Of course, if it's a bit further to the south, a bit weaker, then that will, of course, mean we have a strong tropical storm instead with the landfall. Nonetheless, the impact's going to remain the same. Rainfall, the biggest concern with that. Henri's winds are now at 70 miles an hour. We have a few planes heading into Henri today to give us a better idea on where it's going to go. As we'll see here in a bit, there's a range of possibilities with very, very diverse impacts to the northeastern United States. And so we'll talk about that very briefly, or I suppose not very briefly, but brief enough, and without going too much in depth. Next advisory will be at 5 p.m. Eastern from the Hurricane Center. As we can see, the odds have increased for Cape Cod, Rhode Island, the areas in the northeast getting tropical storm force winds with Henri by about 10 or 20% since yesterday. And so that just shows that the confidence is increasing, that we have impacts with this storm. Again, tropical storm force winds possible in Long Island to Cape Cod as early as Sunday morning. So that's certainly something we're going to keep an eye on, as Henri could pose potential impacts to the United States. Let's take a look once again at the H-WRF model. Note that green area, and it moves over the warm waters of, we weren't going to talk about the green area. It moves over the warm waters of the Gulf Stream, strengthening relatively a lot. And as it moves further to the north, that green area, that is tropical storm force wind field, increases significantly as it moves to landfall. You see it's nearly 4 or 5 times the size that it is right now. And right now it's not certainly a small wind field by any means, but it grows very, very large as it moves north. And then it moves north and slows down. And the good news about that is once it reaches, just before that 40 degrees north mark is where the Gulf Stream kind of cuts off for Henri, and that means that it will have opportunity to weaken. It's also going to be moving slower then, and then moves inland, and we see it sit over the area for several hours, relatively stationary. And as we know, we don't like stationary moving hurricane strength storms. However, the difference with this storm is it'll weaken significantly as it sits over that area. So main concerns with this is if it's strong and moving relatively quickly as it makes its way into New England, wind is going to be an impact, and perhaps over a very large area, wind will be an impact. If it's a bit weaker or moves a bit slower and thus becomes a bit weaker before making landfall, if it makes landfall, rainfall is still going to be a huge concern for the Northeast with Henri, as it will be a very, not a very large storm, but certainly a large storm as it makes its way into the Northeast. Taking a look at the models again, beginning with the GFS located on the left side of our screen here, we see the stronger storms tends to landfall, the weaker storms tends to not. Again, that red indicating a stronger storm, the yellow a bit weaker, but still a decent tropical storm nonetheless. So that's something I've been saying. If it's stronger, the odds are that it hooks inland, and that's certainly not good news for much of the Northeast, perhaps even Long Island, New York, and those areas. And so we'll continue to monitor Henri for potential impacts there. As we see, the European model, I think, has a bit more support for a United States landfall, but is also clearly, we can see if it's stronger, that it has a landfall. If it's weaker, it's a bit off the coast. So again, worst case is that it's stronger, which is obviously self-intuitive. We always know it's worse if it's stronger, but also there's a higher chance of impact if Henri is stronger. And so we really, really, really want to monitor those things over the next few days as we near landfall heading in to Sunday or Monday. Taking a look at the intensity forecast for Henri, we see Category 1, strong high-end Category 1 is certainly not out of the question, perhaps even the most likely scenario at this point in time. But even a Cat 2 or 3 is represented by some of the models, and so we want to continue to keep an eye on that if it does become a super strong storm. And so again, we will continue to do that here. We'll have updates out every night, or at least every afternoon or something like that, over the next few days on both Grace and Henri as they begin to threaten land areas. That's all for now. Chris Dixon of Weather, Catholic Media.